Hey guys, what's up? It's Ripe again. In today's video, a homeowner association sued me for having a boat parked on my private property. However, I was not afraid to fight back and I cost them a huge sum of money. Here is what happened. Subscribe to Ripe on YouTube and hit the bell to turn on notifications. And the first one starts like this. For a long time I lived in an area where the HOA existed mainly in name. They would help people if they had serious problems, but for the most part they did not really do anything. This is honestly the way that I think an HOA runs best, not putting their nose where it doesn't belong and letting people just live their lives. That changed when the HOA president stepped down and somebody else stepped up. Suddenly it was like a totally different neighborhood. This new president wanted to start enforcing the bylaws like crazy and fining people for every small thing. No matter how much we complained though, nothing got done about him. During that time I ended up buying a boat on a really good deal. My cousin wanted to get rid of it to the point that I got it really cheap. It was not huge and I stored it in my driveway hooked up to a little trailer. It fit without any kind of issues and I could drive it out to the water on the weekends. I even sometimes would invite my neighbor who loved boats and had a great time. I did not think anything of it, and when I started to get fines in the mail from the HOA, I was a little bit surprised. The fines were not very clear and just stated that I was in violation of their vehicle regulations. My mind jumped to my car and I started to wonder if something was wrong with it. I had a basic car and it was essentially the same thing as everybody else's in the neighborhood. I sent an email stating my confusion and I never heard back from the HOA. Instead, I just kept getting more fines in the mail that said the same thing. I had read enough stories here to know that I was not gonna pay a single penny unless I found out exactly why they were sending me daily fines in the mail. One day by pure luck, or I guess unluck, I ran into the president of the HOA. I thought that he could look into the problem and help me find out what was wrong with my car, that I was getting fines for it. Me? I'm sorry to bother you, but I've been getting fines in the mail and they're not very clear about what the problem is. President: well, what does the violation say? Me? It just says vehicle violation. I cannot fix my car unless somebody tells me what's wrong with it. It's not right for the HOA to just fine me without telling me how to fix the problem. My car works perfectly fine, I just got it serviced last month. President: oh, so you're OP? Me: yes. Do you know something about the fines? President: yeah, it's not about your car. It's all about that eyesore of a boat and trailer sitting in the driveway. It looks horrible and you're making the entire neighborhood look bad by having it there. We want you to get rid of it. You read that right. He wanted me to get rid of my boat because he did not like how it made the neighborhood look. The vehicle violation they were claiming was the one that stated the driveways were meant for the storage and parking of vehicles only. This was to stop people from using their driveway as a work area or something else that might look weird when driving past. I told them that I was not moving my boat because I could park it anywhere I wanted. I was basically told that if I did not pay the fines and move my boat out of the driveway, they were gonna sue me. I guess they expected me to buckle, but instead I got a lawyer and told them that they could sue me. They did, of course, and with the HOA president being so sure of himself that he was gonna get money from me. After months of waiting and receiving fines in the mail still, I was able to go to court and try and stop the lawsuit against me. I'm gonna be honest, I don't know much of what was going on, but I tried my best to keep up. After a lot of arguing, the main point that the HOA seemed to be using in their defense of suing me was that my boat was not a vehicle. The thing was that the bylaws did not say that the driveway had to be used for cars, it just said vehicles. Legally, a boat falls under that category and the HOA did not seem happy about that. They tried to back it up and claim that they were suing me because it made the neighborhood look bad and even tried to relate it to if I had painted my house polka dots or built a naked sculpture in my lawn. These were actual examples the frazzled lawyer used. The issue with that was the fact that it was clear he was grasping for straws and that he could not change what the fines were for. Right on each one it said that they were for vehicle violation, so that was what the lawsuit had to be about. He did hint that trying to change the fines and sue me again would not end up being a good idea, and at that point it could be seen as harassment. As it already was, I was countersuing them for harassment. There was also one other thing they did that really was the thing that shot them in the foot, so to speak. At least in this HOA, it was not allowed to continue to fine me for a matter that was in the legal process. That meant all of the fines they sent me while we waited for the trial ended up being illegal and counted as them harassing me, and could even be seen as a threat to make me give in to them and not fight back. Since there was no rule I could not keep my boat there, I was able to avoid paying a single one of those bogus fines. As for the harassment and lawsuit, they owed me a big payout, including lawyer fees, missed time off of work, harassment and threats. They ended up owing a total of $300,000. Granted, not all of it went to me and a decent chunk was for lawyers and other kinds of fees. Still, I walked away with a good amount of money and, more importantly, the knowledge that the HOA can lose. This sparked a little bit of chaos where some people that felt they were fined unfairly refused to pay. The HOA did not want to get into and lose another lawsuit, so they stopped pursuing a bunch of other people that they had been trying to fine. Within the HOA, there was a ton of finger pointing and blaming going around. Nobody wanted to be the person that went down for this, and the most fingers ended up getting pointed right at the president. I don't think he was the one that had an issue with my boat, but he was the one that changed the system and supported the HOA members wanting to fine people without looking into it. He stepped down shortly after, and things met a bit of a middle ground. Things were not back to the simple life they used to be, but people were also not getting fined like crazy anymore. It was an area that, at least personally, I could live with, especially since I now knew my rights. You can bet every single time I took my boat out that summer, I felt a little extra happy knowing that I could park it in my driveway and nobody could do a damn thing about it. And yeah, ripe stars, ironically enough, my girlfriend recently told me that in the neighborhood we moved into here in northern Thailand, there might be some sort of an HOA coming up and they are currently looking for people to fill the board. And of course, I instantly told my girlfriend that she should apply for that seat in the board as soon as possible, since we all know how that story could play out in the end. Anyway, the next ones are gonna be some fresh HOA stories from r/Askreddit that have not been read before. The first one goes like this. I have 3 stories about HOAs, 2 about me, 1 about my neighbor. I moved into a new construction neighborhood after picking out all the bells and whistles for the dream house. About 2 years after I moved in, the garbage truck managed to destroy the garbage can somehow. The sanitation company replaced it, but in the time between the trash account being set up and the mishap, the sanitation company changed the color and style of cans they provided. My HOA told me that my garbage can was unauthorized and could not be left on the street on trash day because it was visually detracting. Or I guess distracting, but maybe that's the same. So either way, I went to the city sanitation and explained what was going on, and they told me that they did not maintain the old stock of cans and they had switched over to the new ones when the old ones ran out. So I had to take a letter from them back to the HOA, who would not budge and told me that I needed to have the same kind of can as everybody else. Everybody had their can in the same place on the same side of each house when it was not trash day. So I ended up having to put the new can in the backyard and wheel it around the house at the exact moment that the trash truck showed up and immediately wheel it back to the backyard. I had to make special arrangements with work to be able to do this every Monday. The second HOA story, context: I had the house built in 2002, I had a 1998 Chevy SUV which was 4 years old. I received a letter from the HOA that said my vehicle, which did not have a single dent, scratch or paint blemish and was washed and tire dressing applied weekly, was an eyesore and could not be parked in my driveway. The letter referred to it being disabled and a junker. Granted, I lived in a neighborhood of Mercedes, BMW and Range Rovers, but it definitely was not in the class of junk. So I had to park my truck in the garage, and every time I needed to leave I had to play musical cars with my then wife. The third was for my neighbor. His lawnmower stopped running, so he hired somebody to come in and do his lawn until he was able to get it fixed or get a new one. He hired somebody who did the absolutely normal park the truck on the street while they are doing the lawn. It was just one guy, but the HOA shows up and demands the lawn mowing service not park on the street, but instead park outside the community because his work truck and trailer detracted from the classy and elegant stature of the community. They then called the police when he refused. I ended up selling the house and moving out because there were 14 million other stupid reasons all revolving around the HOA. I bought a house and while I was looking, I absolutely positively refused to look at a house that had anything to do with an HOA. And the second Askreddit story starts like this. Not an official HOA, but the management at my trailer park were very upset with me. Why? Well, I was simply exploiting a loophole. We are technically only allowed 2 pets per household and I had 8 chickens. I was able to get away with this for so long, 3 to 4 years, that I thought no one would ever notice. But if they did, I had a plan. Reading the lease rules, I came to the conclusion that my chickens were technically livestock, and being that there was no rule listed against livestock on the property, I went ahead and got them anyway. Fast forward to about 8 months ago and my manager discovered my coop. She had a very heated argument with me, but I kept my cool and explained to her that I was not breaking any rules. She left after about a half hour of shouting and general unruliness. Around a week later at around 10 PM, I hear my chickens panicking, being louder than usual. I assume that an animal is trying to get into the coop as we have a stray and feral cat problem and it has happened before, so I retrieve my shotgun and go out the back door and around the back of the house. And what do I find? None other than my manager as well as the park's landscaping guy trying to pry the roof off of my coop and stuff my chickens into waiting animal carriers. I racked the shotgun, getting their attention, and watched them promptly run out of the front gate. Nightmarish behavior on her part, but I waited a week to see if anything else would happen, and when nothing did, I decided to let it go. She learned her lesson, and so did I. Don't leave your chickens in plain sight. And the third Askreddit HOA story goes like this. 50 years ago, a former owner planted 2 citrus trees too close to the property line. The neighbors did not mind because they were happy to get free fruit. 2 years after we buy the place, the HOA sends us a warning letter that we needed to trim back both trees. But they don't send the warning in winter or spring. No, they wait until it is triple-digit weather, 40 degrees / 104 Fahrenheit. Nobody had complained about our trees before. Some new electee to the board had gotten snoopy and overzealous, so I head out back with the ladder and a manual saw in the early morning. The overhanging limbs violated the fine print, so it had to be done. After the temperature heated up to 90 Fahrenheit, I called it quits and then started up early Sunday for another round. The project was not done yet because there it required too much sawing. Sent an email to the board with a progress photo and assured them the work would continue to progress on Saturday and Sunday mornings until it was completed, but had to be spread over several weeks for safety reasons and because the trash pickup bins would only hold so much. I then got an officious reply Monday afternoon insisting the board had always been diligent about this and it was up to me to finish the job pronto since I had created the problem. Wrote back with a second photo, a close-up of 20 years of growth rings on one of the branches. Added a note that we had only owned the home for 2 years. Asked whether the board would assume liability for any injuries sustained if we rushed the job to come into immediate compliance. They gave us 6 weeks, I finished the work in 3. And the next one is the last Askreddit story. My home is in a rural and unincorporated area, so the HOA is a stand-in for local government in many ways. They maintain the parks and roads and local business permits with more power than you would expect. They also care very little about weeds or trimming trees. There is a lovely local lake with a small food cart as the only business. The owners had consistently refused to do boat or paddleboard rentals for about 10 years. I attended a community meeting to submit a request for a permit to open a paddleboard and paddle boat rental business. I laid out the costs and return on investments as part of the required process of making my case, how it would not require any additional land than what was already set aside for commercial purposes. It was rejected out of hand and rather forcefully. I again laid out how similar businesses had done well in other areas. I was told to come back to next month's meeting. The next month I found the head of the board had partnered with the food cart to rent paddleboards. My business proposal was rejected as redundant. And yeah, Ripe Stars, I gotta say, I am absolutely baffled by this, that in OP's case in this story, the HOA apparently acts as a de facto mini-government. I could not imagine living in such a community. And the next one is titled, My ex-wife learned the hard way to not ignore a court summons. A bit of background, I was married to a woman for 15 years and ended up divorcing her because she liked to sleep with other guys. Which does not really sound ideal for a marriage. Anyway, while it took me 6 years to stumble onto this fact, she worked from home, I commuted 2 hours each way into the city, I owe it to her being either a sociopath or a narcissist, or both, why not? She could absolutely turn on and off the charm and could come up with lies staring you right in the eyes. Hindsight is 20 out of 20. Let's call her V, short for Voldemort, as one time when I was talking about her after the separation, I referred to her as she who must not be named, and the nickname stuck with all my friends and family. During the marriage, my ex and I were best friends with another couple, and for this post we will call them Sam and Marie. Sam was still or is my best friend, Marie was V's best friend. Marie had found out about V's plans to cheat on me prior to me finding out and told V that she couldn't condone infidelity and their friendship would end if V did cheat on me. But no, Marie did not tell me and I don't blame her for not doing so. When I finally found out V was having a Facebook affair, if you're going to have an online affair, don't do it while married to a computer expert, with some dude in CA, we lived in Massachusetts, it was just 2 weeks before V was flying him out and putting him up in a hotel for 3 days. I spent those 2 weeks getting a lawyer, a PI and my exit strategy together. I left her the weekend after their hotel stay, she would spend the days with him and come home for the afternoon/evening without a shred of guilt showing in her actions. The private investigator having gotten pics and video of them leaving the hotel and eating lunch together and heading back to the hotel. I first stayed at Sam and Marie's in their in-law basement apartment, eventually moving to a small apartment back in the town where V lived. Fast forward 9 months and I am divorced from V. Why it was so short to divorce is another tale worthy of this subreddit. We had one daughter, let's call her Rebecca. She was 13 at the time, between us still at home, and we are trying shared custody and live about 1/4 of a mile apart. There are other kids from the marriage, but they were living apart from us at that time and don't play a part in this part of the whole story. We had acquired a lake house during the marriage and had it listed to sell, and we had it written into the divorce agreement to split the proceeds, but paying half the mortgage on that and the rent on my apartment was really stretching me thin financially. One day Marie emails me, subject line in all caps, "V just tried to get me fired." Long story short, V emailed Marie's boss claiming that Marie was gossiping about V on sales calls to customers, but her boss knew it was BS and told V as much. Wisely, Marie did not mess around waiting to see what was next. She went to the local courthouse that day and filed for an anti-harassment order against V. It took several visits to the judge as V chose to ignore multiple summons to court so that the judge could hear her side of the story. Eventually, the judge granted the order because V never showed up to court. During this time, V called 911 on me multiple times, one time claiming I put a letter bomb in her mailbox, and the other 2 times I supposedly had entered her apartment without her permission. The letter bomb accusation was due to me posting a link to shipyourenemiesglitter.com on Facebook months before and subsequently mailing her a thick bundle of forms to sign. Police were called and I had to go to V's apartment and open the letter in front of the police. Needless to say, there was no glitter, let alone a bomb. Oddly enough, this accusation came just days after there had been an actual bomb threat called into the town hall, which is quite funny that. The 2 times I had gone into her apartment had both been to drop off Rebecca's book bag when she had forgotten it at my apartment. Both times I had texts from V granting me permission to open the door and put the book bag inside. She would then text me after I had done so, trying to revoke permission. To this day, I think V thinks that if she deletes a message on her end, the message is deleted on my end. Even though kids will be kids and Rebecca did forget her book bag at my place on at least one other subsequent occasion, I did not fall for V's ruse a third time. All forgotten book bags were delivered by Rebecca and I meeting halfway between the apartments. Also included with the multiple 911 calls were multiple minor child wellness checks on evenings when I had Rebecca at my apartment. It is so much fun having to explain to your child why the police are showing up at 8 o'clock at night to check to see if she is okay. Basically, V was trying to get me frustrated and react badly. Throughout this whole mess, Sam and Marie have been lifesavers to me and Rebecca, hosting and cooking weekly family dinners for us. They are Rebecca's godparents and just being absolute rock steady in their support and tolerance of the situation. Around this time, V filed for sole custody. At the strong urging of my lawyer, I insisted on a guardian ad litem (GAL) being appointed to represent Rebecca's best interests, her being a minor child. Of course, the parents must pay the fees of the GAL. At this point my finances are really getting worrisome, so I write an email to V saying we need to drop the price of the lake house and get that sold regardless of profit. I needed that albatross off from around my neck so I could continue to afford to live where I could co-parent Rebecca as well as fight the custody battle. So there I am, going deeper into debt, cannot pay rent and mortgage long term, and V is starting another court battle for full custody. With no other choice, I move back in with Sam and Marie so I can continue to pay my lawyer and keep fighting. About a week after I am settled back in with Sam and Marie, I hear from Rebecca that V's glass patio table was smashed the previous night. I was in NH that evening with witnesses, so it couldn't have been me. I was paying for Rebecca's cell phone and we have Live 360, so we could know where each other were at any time due to an earlier threat by V to take the youngest kids and move to California to be with the idiot from Facebook. Plus, it had history, so I could at least prove my phone was an NH. Rebecca says she knows I was an NH and tells me she will tell her mom it wasn't me. The next day I was served with a restraining order, RO, claiming that I had vandalized V's patio furniture and that she still felt afraid due to the letter bomb incident. The cops knew it was BS, but the judge had no knowledge of the incident when V filed the RO and had to take her at her word. The RO was for 10 days and then I could show up in court and contest it being continued. The officer who served the RO explained that he had to confiscate any firearms and licenses. While I did have a recently acquired Class A concealed carry license, actually from a couple's firearms course that was an anniversary gift from V the previous year, I hadn't had any firearms other than a BB gun of Rebecca's. The officer left with just a Class A license, smiling as he said he was pretty sure I was not going to go on a rampage with a BB gun. The first thing I did the next day was to go to the police station and request all incident reports that involved me since I left her. I knew of 7 incidents, but the desk sergeant informed me that they had 19 incident reports from V. He talked to me a bit, clearly trying to get a feel for what kind of person I was and just what was going on. We parted company with him assuring me that the patrol officers would now know what was going on and the PD would do right by me so long as I kept my cool. Fair enough. 2 nights before the court appearance to contest the RO, Sam and Marie and I are sitting on their porch drinking some beer and brainstorming about what I'm going to say to the judge. I'm a bit discouraged because I know it's going to be a he said she said situation and I am living in Massachusetts. If your chromosomes don't match, you are a second-class citizen when it comes to parental rights in Massachusetts. Plus V deserves an Oscar for how well she plays the victim. It was not looking good. My only hope was if V decided the RO itself was enough to make me look bad to the GAL and not show up and let the RO expire. Mary suddenly said, "Hey, let me see the RO." I handed it over to her. "Hey, this is my judge. She's the judge that granted me the anti-harassment order against V." "You're kidding." Sam and I looked at each other in amazement. I swear it is, let me go get it. Marie goes inside and comes back a few minutes later with her court order. And sure enough, it is the same judge. My grin felt like it was going to split my lips, and now I knew exactly what to do. Now for the meat of the story. The court date to contest the RO arrived, and I am there first thing, just me. No lawyer because he had to appear in court elsewhere. I strongly hoped that V wouldn't show up, but unfortunately she did, with someone other than her divorce lawyer. And before court was in session, her new lawyer approached me and offered to let the no contact order lapse. But he wanted a do not abuse order left in place. I politely declined her offer, stating I had done nothing to warrant either order, and I said that I wanted the judge to hear my argument. V's lawyer was taken aback by this a bit and then shrugged as if to say, "It's your funeral," and walked back to where V was sitting. We went in front of the judge and V told her side of the story and I started telling mine, introducing all the incident reports from the police department, but V and her lawyer did not have copies of all of them, so the judge sent us back to the gallery to await second call while V and her lawyer reviewed the reports. When we were called back, the judge started to go into the content of the police reports and I stated that the content was almost irrelevant, but she insisted on going through them. During that, V emphasized the two incidents where I briefly entered V's apartment with her permission, but she characterized them as me doing so without her permission. I said that if necessary, I would be able to provide the communications where she gave me permission, but I didn't have them with me today. When going through the first police report from the night I found out about the online affair, wherein V claimed I had brain lesions, V also tried to characterize me as having multiple personality disorder as told to her by our shared primary care physician. The judge asked her with no little incredulity, "His doctor told you this without his permission?" "Yes, Your Honor." The judge looked at me puzzled. I shrugged and said, while slowly shaking my head in disbelief, "I have a very close relationship with my doctor, and I highly doubt he would violate HIPAA. She looked a little nonplussed, but I think she got the message that V was not being entirely truthful. As that was the last police report to go through, I reminded her that my point was not the content, but that I thought V was using the courts to harass and intimidate me and to make me look bad to the GAL. And I brought up that this is not out of character for V, as she has an anti-harassment order in place against her, put there by Your Honor, Your Honor. The judge blinked at that bit of info. I gave her the details and reminded her that V declined to show up at the multiple hearings. As I recounted the particulars of Marie's story, the judge squinted her eyes more and more and her frown got deeper and deeper. She turned to V and her voice was slow cold fury. "Do you have an anti-harassment order in place against you?" V's voice was so small and weak. "Yes, Your Honor." So I wanted to look at V's face to see her reaction, but I kept my eyes locked on the judge. The judge pointed at V. "Why didn't you show up to the hearings?" A pause as V struggled to find some excuse. "Because I didn't want to associate with that." But the judge waved hers to silence. I think that was the turning point, as I think she was going to grant their request for the do not abuse, but she turned to me and said sternly, "I think there's a bit of this going on both sides, but clearly she wants you to stay out of her apartment. Never again, Your Honor. Restraining order terminated." And with a bang of her gavel, we were done. Because the RO was terminated, legally that meant it never happened. I got my Class A concealed carry license back the next day and ultimately won the custody battle. A large part of which was the termination of the RO, but also due to V's subsequent increasingly poor emotional and verbal treatment of Rebecca. Anyway, if you want more exclusive RIPE videos, please click the join button next to the subscribe button to gain access to more exclusive posts and videos. Thank you so much and I hope to see you again tomorrow.